Let me ask you something raw and real. Have you ever been in a relationship that felt more like a business deal, where every gesture of love had to be matched, measured, or reciprocated with equal value, where affection wasn't freely given, it was traded? That's not love, that's a transaction. And if you've ever been with an avoidant ex who only knows how to connect through transactions, you know the exhausting emptiness that comes with it. This is the truth. Transactional love is not love at all. It's an emotional barter system built out of fear. They're not giving you their heart, they're giving you a product with terms and conditions attached. And here's the painful part. If you've been in this dynamic, you may have started to question your worth, doubting whether you deserve real, unconditional love. But I'm here to tell you, you do. You've always deserved it. You just need to understand the game you were unknowingly playing and then refuse to play it anymore. Today, we're breaking down how to spot, understand, and break free from a purely transactional relationship with an avoidant ex, and how to reclaim your emotional power. If love feels like a scoreboard, you're not in a relationship. You're in a competition, and when you're in a competition, you can never fully relax, you can never fully breathe, and you can never fully be yourself. Instead of opening your heart, you're calculating every move. You're asking yourself, if I do this for them, will they do something back for me? Or worse, if I don't give them exactly what they expect, will they pull away? This is the exhausting emotional treadmill that an avoidant ex creates when their version of connection is purely transactional. With a scoreboard dynamic, nothing is done simply because it feels good to give or because love naturally overflows. Every action is weighed, measured, and compared. If you buy them dinner, they might keep mental tabs and think, I'll return the favor, but only when it's convenient. If you open up emotionally, they may offer a surface-level response, just enough to balance the emotional exchange without ever truly letting you in. It's not love. It's an exchange of goods and services dressed up in romantic packaging. And here's the dangerous part: when you live in that kind of relationship, it starts to rewire you. You may begin to believe that this is how all love works, that love is earned, bargained for, or negotiated. You may catch yourself performing for affection, bending your needs to keep the balance sheet in the black. Without realizing it, you start playing the same game they do, and the tragedy is that you lose the very essence of love you were searching for. The scoreboard mentality is also a tool of control. For the avoidant, keeping things transactional feels safe. They don't have to risk deep vulnerability, they just have to make sure the deal remains even. But for you, this means never experiencing the warmth of being loved for who you are. It's always about what you do. It's about what you bring to the table in the currency they've chosen: favors, tasks, physical connection, status, never your soul. So if you feel like you're constantly proving your worth, constantly keeping track of who did what last, constantly afraid that one misstep will tip the scales against you, know this: you're not in love's embrace. You're in a transaction. And as long as love is a ledger, you will always be paying and never truly receiving. Many avoidants learned early in life that vulnerability equals danger. Somewhere in their childhood or formative relationships, they absorbed the lesson that opening up, showing their feelings, expressing their needs, relying on someone was not safe. Maybe they were met with criticism when they cried. Maybe they were ignored when they reached for comfort. Maybe the people who were supposed to protect them were inconsistent, loving one moment and withdrawing the next. That unpredictability leaves a deep imprint. It teaches the mind, if I let someone get too close, they can hurt me. If I depend on someone, they might leave. Better to stay guarded. This is why many avoidants replace intimacy with transactions. Transactions feel predictable, they are clear, measurable, and emotionally safe for someone who fears the chaos of deep emotional connection. Vulnerability requires trust and surrender, but a deal has terms, a deal has limits, a deal can be controlled. By operating this way, they get to connect without truly risking themselves. It's not that they don't want love, most do. It's that the risk of pain feels heavier than the reward of intimacy. Over time, this coping style becomes so ingrained that it's not even conscious. They might genuinely believe they're being fair or balanced in the relationship. They might think that keeping things transactional is healthy because it avoids messy emotional entanglements. But underneath that, there's a hidden fear. If I give too much of my heart, I might lose myself. I might be rejected. I might be abandoned. The tragedy is that this very defense mechanism, the shield they built to stay safe, ends up starving the relationship. While you might be offering emotional presence, empathy, and openness, they respond with measured gestures and limited engagement. You're trying to swim in the ocean of love, but they're standing safely on the shore, tossing you lifebuoys instead of joining you in the water. And here's the trap for you. Because they're not intentionally malicious, you might keep excusing their lack of depth. You might tell yourself they just need more time. They've been hurt before. But without their willingness to face that deep-rooted fear of vulnerability, nothing changes. Their past will keep dictating their present, and your relationship will keep feeling like a contract instead of a connection. Transactional love survives when one person keeps over-investing, and more often than not, that person is you. Over-giving becomes the silent fuel that keeps the imbalance alive. At first, you might not even notice it happening. You just want to make them happy, to show them you care, to prove your love. You buy the little gifts. You initiate the conversations. You make the plans. You are the one who bends, adjusts, and stretches to fill the gaps they leave empty. But here's the problem. Over-giving is not the same as loving. True love flows naturally from both sides. Over-giving is a survival strategy. It's what you do when you believe that if you give enough, eventually they'll meet you halfway. You're hoping your consistent effort will awaken something inside them, that one day they'll suddenly realize your worth and start pouring back into you. The truth, over-giving often does the opposite. It trains them to give less. Avoidance in a transactional dynamic. Notice your pattern, consciously or not. They see that no matter how little they invest emotionally, you keep compensating for it. And in a strange way, this confirms their worldview. People will give to me without me having to be vulnerable. I can keep my walls up and still receive. Your overgiving becomes permission for them to remain emotionally unavailable. It reinforces the transactional model because you keep supplying the emotional payment they never truly reciprocate. Over time, this takes a toll on you. You start to feel depleted, resentful, and unseen. But because you've tied your value to how much you give, you keep pushing yourself to offer more, hoping the next gesture will be the one that finally unlocks their heart. You're chasing a debt that will never be paid, and the more you give, the more that debt grows. The most dangerous part, over-giving can feel noble, even romantic. You tell yourself you're patient, loyal, devoted, but beneath that is fear. The fear that if you stop, the relationship will collapse. And that fear keeps you trapped in a cycle where your love becomes currency, and you're always the one footing the bill. Real love trades in a completely different currency, one that can't be counted, measured, or tracked. Its value isn't determined by the size of a gift, the number of favors done, or how perfectly each person pays back what the other gives. Real love is built on empathy, trust, and vulnerability. It's about showing up for each other not because you owe something, but because you want to. It's the quiet text in the middle of the day just to say, I'm thinking about you. It's the hand you hold when the other person is trembling. It's listening to someone's fears without rushing to fix them, because their heart matters more than your comfort. When the currency of a relationship is emotional presence, there's no scoreboard to keep. You're not calculating whether the other person's gesture matches yours in size or effort. You're simply giving because you care. And here's the beauty of it. When both people are in this space, giving flows naturally in both directions. You feel safe to lean on each other, to share your imperfections, to admit when you're hurting. There's no fear that the other person will ooze your vulnerability against you. But in a transactional dynamic, especially with an avoidant ex, emotional currency gets replaced with tangible exchanges. They might feel comfortable doing something for you, buying you something, or helping with a task, but they shy away from sitting in your pain or letting you see theirs. For them, that kind of intimacy feels too unpredictable, too risky. They believe that goods and services are safer than shared souls. The tragedy is that while they may think they're protecting themselves, they're actually starving the relationship. You can't build deep trust on a foundation of trade deals. You can't create lasting intimacy if every gift of the heart has to be matched. with something of equal weight. It strips the magic from connection. Understanding the difference between emotional currency and transactional currency changes everything. It allows you to see when you're being fed scraps instead of a feast. It helps you recognize whether your needs for empathy, trust, and vulnerability are being met, or whether you're being handed substitutions that might look like care on the surface but leave you hungry underneath. You don't have to earn love. That's the part that's so easy to forget when you've been with someone who only knows how to connect through conditions. In a transactional relationship, especially with an avoidant ex, everything starts to feel like a test. You begin to believe that your worth is tied to what you do, how well you please them, or how much you sacrifice. Without realizing it, you slip into the mindset that love is something you win, something you have to constantly work for, prove, and maintain, or it will be taken away. Detaching from the outcome means breaking this illusion. It's the moment you realize that true love is not a prize you have to chase, but a gift that flows freely when you're with the right person. It means refusing to measure your value by how much someone else chooses to give you in return. When you detach from the need to make someone love you, you reclaim your power. You stop negotiating your worth in the marketplace of their emotions. With an avoidant ex, this is especially critical. Their fear of closeness can twist your efforts into pressure, making them retreat further. The more you push for a particular outcome, commitment, affection, acknowledgement, the more they instinctively pull back. It becomes a tug of war you can never win because the very act of tugging keeps them on the defensive. Detachment is not about giving up on love or shutting down your heart. It's about releasing the expectation that love has to look a certain way in order for you to be whole. It's understanding that your happiness doesn't hinge on this person changing or finally giving you what you've been hoping for. When you no longer grip tightly to the outcome, you see the truth more clearly. If they can't meet you where you are emotionally, it's not a reflection of your inadequacy. It's a reflection of their limitations. This shift creates freedom. You stop walking on eggshells, stop tailoring your every move to keep their interest, and stop feeling crushed every time they don't respond the way you want. You start living in a space where love, when it comes, is because it's freely given, not because you've worked yourself to exhaustion to earn it. Never negotiate your self-worth for temporary approval. The moment you begin to trade pieces of yourself just to keep someone's interest, you've already stepped into dangerous territory. With an avoidant ex who thrives in a transactional mindset, this can become a subtle trap. They may not outright demand that you change who you are, but the unspoken message is there. I'll give you a little affection if you act the way I'm comfortable with. I'll show up for you if you don't push for more. I'll stay as long as you don't challenge my walls. Over time, you start making micro compromises. You speak less about your needs because you've learned they pull away when confronted. You stop asking for deeper connection because you don't want to be too much. You ignore the little disappointments because you're afraid they might walk if you call them out. At first, these adjustments feel small, even harmless. But the truth is, every time you suppress your truth for their comfort, you chip away at your own value in the relationship. Approval, especially in a transactional relationship, is conditional. It's given when you play the game and withheld when you don't. This is why negotiating your self-worth for it is so dangerous. It keeps you in a constant state of performance. You're not showing up as your authentic self. You're showing up as the version of yourself you think they'll tolerate or reward. That's not connection. That's self-erasure. The cost of this is high. You begin to lose touch with who you are outside the relationship. Your boundaries blur, your needs shrink, and your identity becomes entangled in keeping them satisfied. The saddest part, even after all the bending, they still won't meet you at the depth you crave. You can give up pieces of yourself all day long, and it still won't create the intimacy you deserve. Protecting your boundaries means holding on to your value even when it risks upsetting them. It means standing in your truth without apology. It means remembering that their approval is fleeting, but your self-worth is permanent if you guard it. The right connection will never require you to dismantle yourself just to keep it alive. The wrong one will make that the price of admission. Seek relationships where giving flows naturally, not under obligation. When love is genuine, it doesn't keep a tally. You don't give because you have to. You give because you want to. There's a natural rhythm, an unspoken understanding that both people are contributing not to meet a quota, but to nurture the connection. In this space, a hug is not repayment for a favor. A kind word is not currency to buy future support. Every gesture comes from a place of abundance, not fear. With an avoidantex in a transactional dynamic, that natural flow is missing. Giving becomes calculated, either as a way to settle a perceived debt or to maintain a certain image of fairness without going any deeper. This calculation robs the relationship of its warmth. You start to feel like you have to earn every ounce of closeness, and when you do give, it's often with the silent hope that they will finally give back in equal measure. That's not mutuality. That's a trade agreement disguised as romance. Mutuality isn't about splitting everything evenly. It's about both people showing up in ways that matter most to each other without keeping score. Sometimes you give more because your partner is struggling, and other times they give more when you need it. Over time, it evens out, not because you're measuring, but because both of you are committed to caring for the other's heart. In a healthy dynamic, your generosity is met with gratitude and reciprocation, not obligation. You don't feel like you're pulling someone along or begging for scraps. You feel seen, valued, and cherished simply for being yourself. The love feels alive because it's not being suffocated by rules, tallies, or silent transactions. When you've been stuck in a transactional relationship, stepping into mutuality can feel almost foreign. You might even feel suspicious of kindness that isn't immediately balanced by something in return. But that's because you've been conditioned to believe love must be earned. Real connection dismantles that belief. It teaches you that love doesn't flow because it's owed. It flows because it's inspired by who you are and how you show up. When giving flows naturally, you stop worrying about keeping the scales even. You're too busy enjoying the shared energy, the ease, and the trust that comes from knowing the other person is as invested in you as you are in them. That's when love stops feeling like work and starts feeling like home. The right person will give without keeping a ledger. They won't mentally record every act of kindness, every favor, or every moment of support to use as bargaining chips later. With them, generosity isn't a strategy, it's an instinct. They give because they care, because it feels good to make you smile, because your well-being matters to them as much as their own. There's no anxiety about whether they're getting enough back, no subtle resentment brewing in the background, no withholding of affection until you earn it. When you're with someone like this, you feel the difference immediately. The air is lighter. You don't second-guess their motives or wonder if they're keeping score. If they cook dinner for you, it's not because they expect you to buy the next meal. If they listen to you vent about your day, it's not because they're waiting for their turn to unload. Each gesture stands on its own, offered freely without the invisible strings that make love feel like a contract. This kind of giving creates abundance. When you're not worried about being used, your own generosity expands. You're not afraid of doing too much because you know it's not one-sided. There's a steady exchange of care, support, and affection, not in equal numbers every day, but in a balance that feels organic over time. In contrast, with an avoidant ex locked in a transactional mindset, every act becomes part of an emotional accounting system. It's exhausting because nothing is simply given. You always sense the ledger in the background, the quiet calculations about who owes what. That constant scorekeeping drains the joy out of giving and replaces it with a subtle tension. Abundance can't exist in that environment. It needs freedom. It needs trust. It needs the safety of knowing that if you pour into the relationship today, they'll pour back, not because they should, but because they want to. And if they can't do that, it's not because you're unworthy of it. It's because they're still stuck in a scarcity model where love feels dangerous to give away without a guaranteed return. When you finally meet the person who gives without a ledger, you'll understand why all those past connections felt so heavy. Love isn't supposed to feel like a running balance sheet. It's supposed to feel like an endless current, one you can both step into without fear of running dry. When you step back and look at the patterns of a transactional relationship with an avoidant ex, you begin to see the heavy cost it takes on your emotional well-being. It's not just about the imbalance of giving and receiving. It's about what that imbalance does to your sense of self. Over time, you start believing love must be earned, bargained for, and maintained like a fragile contract. You begin to feel that affection is conditional, trust is rationed, and closeness comes with hidden terms and conditions. This belief system doesn't just affect your current relationship, it seeps into how you view yourself and what you believe you deserve. The danger isn't only in their lack of emotional availability, it's in how it convinces you to lower your standards without even realizing it. True love can never thrive in the shadow of constant measurement. The scoreboard has to be dismantled for intimacy to flourish. In healthy relationships, giving flows without the expectation of equal repayment, and receiving happens without guilt or suspicion. This isn't because one person is endlessly selfless. It's because both understand that love is not a transaction. It's an ongoing exchange of care, empathy, and trust that ebbs and flows naturally. The person who is right for you will never make you feel like you're one misstep away from losing their affection. They won't withdraw when you express your needs, nor will they punish vulnerability with silence or distance. Instead, they will see your openness as an invitation to come closer, not a signal to retreat. Breaking free from transactional love means reclaiming your boundaries, your self-worth, and your vision of what connection should look like. It means recognizing when you're over, giving to compensate for someone else's underinvestment, and choosing to step out of that cycle. It's about understanding the deep-rooted fears that make avoidant individuals behave the way they do, while still holding them accountable for the impact of their actions. You can have compassion for someone's wounds without sacrificing yourself to heal them. You can acknowledge their limitations without shrinking your needs to fit inside them. This shift is the turning point where you stop being a participant in their transactional system and start creating space for the kind of love you truly want. There is power in detachment, not the cold withdrawal of shutting down your heart, but the warm, steady strength of knowing you don't have to cling to someone to keep them. When you detach from the outcome, you give yourself permission to see the truth clearly. If they can't meet you with the depth, consistency, and generosity you offer, then the connection cannot sustain you. And that's not a failure, it's a redirection towards something better. Love that is meant for you will not require you to earn it at the expense of your dignity. It will not drain you just to keep it alive. It will feel safe, expansive, and mutual in the end. The right relationship is not about finding someone who never struggles or fears intimacy. It's about finding someone who chooses to lean in rather than pull away. Someone who gives without keeping score. Someone who sees your worth without you having to prove it. And most importantly, it's about becoming the person who refuses to settle for anything less. Because when you know the difference between a transaction and a true connection, you'll never mistake conditional affection for real love again. And in that moment, you step into the kind of abundance that no ledger can measure, a love that's freely given, deeply felt, and endlessly sustaining. Thank you for watching and being part of this journey. Remember, your worth is not up for negotiation, and you deserve love that flows freely without conditions. If this message resonated, share it with someone who needs the reminder today. Stay strong, stay true, and keep choosing yourself. Until next time, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.